Now let's talk about this transmission challenge in particular and bring in Matt Rennie, co-founder of energy advisory firm Rennie Partners. Good to talk to you again, Matt. Tell us about this decision in Western Australia, and when we replicate that, of course, to the much bigger national electricity market, just how big is this challenge to get transmission to link in renewable solar farms and wind farms in particular?
Look, it's an enormous challenge, and we're really just at the beginning of it. We know with transmission that we're looking at around $14 billion over the next 10 to 15 years. We know we need 40,000 new FTEs. We know we need 600,000 tonnes of steel. But it's also the distribution system as well, which needs to be hugely upgraded in order to deal with electric vehicles and the electrification that everybody's expecting in the next 15 to 20 years.
Now, this is the huge challenge, whether you're a renewables and green energy advocate or not. We are talking about a transmission that requires an enormous amount of investment, as you say, both in the cities, in our distribution networks in the cities, but also the big transmission networks around the country. Who pays for all of that? Well,
ultimately, the consumer pays. We know that with distribution, that with EVs coming and solar and batteries, that there'll be a very large investment in the low voltage network in particular, so the stringy lines that go up and down the streets. We know that on the transmission side, there's a phenomenal amount of investment yet to come. And we know that when charging stations start to be placed in houses and shopping centres and buildings, that we're going to need much more investment around that. But ultimately, it is the customer. And so I don't think we're going to be able to avoid it in the next 15 to 20, particularly as we start to move away from combustion vehicles and start to move towards electricity being the new fuel.
So when politicians love to tell us that renewable energy is the cheapest form of energy, are they spinning a lie here? Because shouldn't they be factoring in all these additional costs, storage as well, of course, which is terribly expensive? They all add to our power bills.
Yeah, I don't think there's any chance that bills are going to go down. But if we contextualise a little bit, we know that the average power bill at the moment is about $1,400. We know that the average petrol bill is about the same. And so if electricity bills double, we know we're roughly the same in terms of household expenditure. The main issue, though, is that we really need to be, or that we're in a competition for three things as we move into this new thing. We're in a competition for equipment, because the entire world is going through this electrification transformation at the moment. We're in a competition for finance, and most particularly, we're in a competitive environment for people wearing high vis. And it's going to be very difficult for us to complete this transformation at the cost we think it's going to cost and in the time we think it's going to take.
Well, this is another reason, though, why we talk about small modular reactors in particular, nuclear energy in particular, because you save on a lot of these costs. People like to talk up the costs of nuclear, but if you were to put a small modular reactor or two where there are closed coal-fired power stations, you have all the transmission network you need. You're saving all those additional costs.
Yeah, well, the small modular nuclear reactor story is an interesting one. We know that they're much smaller, so they're around 300 megawatts compared to gigawatts. We know that the safety exclusion zones are much smaller. So for very large nuclear reactors, it can be up to 80 kilometres of safety exclusion zones. And in the United States, the exclusion zone is roughly around the perimeter of the site. At the moment, they're not quite cost competitive. They're about $3 a watt compared to renewables at, say, $1, or coal slightly, roughly a little bit more than that. And so, but the cost curves are coming down, and there's a lot of research going on. It's certainly one to watch.
Indeed it is. Thanks for joining us, Matt. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Chris.
Matt Rennie there on our Energy Challenge.